Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Our story begins in London, England, on a cold Christmas Eve, when a mean old man named Ebenezer Scrooge was working in the office he had once shared with Jacob Marley, his business partner. But Jacob had died many years ago. The door was open so that Scrooge could keep an eye on his clerk, Bob Cratchit, who was writing letters and shivering in the tiny room. Suddenly, a cheerful voice broke the icy silence. "Merry Christmas, Uncle," said the voice, and when Scrooge looked up, he found his nephew Fred standing in front of him.
"Bah, humbug," said Scrooge. "Christmas nonsense. You've got nothing to be merry about. You're so poor."
"And you've got nothing to be miserable about. You're so rich," said Fred. "Anyway, come and have dinner with my wife and me tomorrow."
"Go away and leave me in peace," said Scrooge.
"I'm sorry you're such a misery, Uncle, but I wish you a Merry Christmas all the same." At closing time, Bob Cratchit put on his hat.
"I suppose you want the day off tomorrow," grumbled Scrooge.
Yes, please, if you don't mind, sir," said Bob.
"I do mind,"
growled Scrooge, but he grudgingly gave Bob permission to spend Christmas Day with his family, and then made his way back to his own dark and miserable home. Scrooge locked the front door behind him, but as soon as he sat down in the living room, a very strange thing happened. Something came through the front door, up the stairs, and into the room. It was the ghost of his business partner, Jacob Marley.
"Ebenezer,"
said the ghost,
"I've come to warn you. If you continue to be mean to everyone, you will be as miserable as I am now. You are going to be visited by 3 spirits. The first will come at 1 o'clock tonight. Learn from them, Ebenezer, and save your soul."
Then the ghost disappeared, leaving Scrooge shaking his head. At first, he had been frightened, but now he began to wonder if it had been a dream. He went to examine his front door. It was still locked.
"Ugh,"
he said.
"Humbug."
Suddenly, he felt very tired, and without even undressing, he fell onto his bed and in no time was fast asleep. When he woke, it was so dark that he could barely distinguish the window from the walls of his bedroom. Just then, a nearby church clock struck 1, and immediately the room was filled with light. Scrooge found himself staring at the strangest being he had ever seen. It was small and had white hair that hung all the way down its back, but its face was as smooth as a child's.
"Who are you?"
asked Scrooge.
"I am the ghost of Christmas past,"
replied the spirit in a voice that was soft and gentle.
"Come with me."
The next thing Scrooge knew, they had passed through the wall and were standing in front of a big red brick house.
"I know this place,"
cried Scrooge as they entered the building.
"It's my old school."
Now they were in a large room full of benches and desks. At one desk, all alone, sat a small boy reading a book. Scrooge wiped a tear from his eye because he knew the little boy was him. Suddenly, A little girl rushed in, threw her arms around the little boy's neck, and kissed him. "My dear brother," she cried, "Father sent me to bring you home for Christmas." "Such a lovely girl, your sister Fran," said the spirit, "and so kind-hearted." "That's how she was," said Scrooge. "When she grew up, she had a child." "Your nephew Fred," said the spirit. "He's as kind-hearted as his mother. Now let's go and see another Christmas." They found themselves entering a room in a warehouse, which was full of people dancing and singing. "This is where I had my first job," said Scrooge. "And that's Mr. Fezziwig, my old boss, and his wife. And those are all the friends I made, and that's me." He pointed to a teenage boy who was laughing and dancing with a pretty girl.
"Merry Christmas! Enjoy the fun! There's food and drink for everyone!"
sang Mr. Fezziwig. "It doesn't take much to make these people happy," said the spirit of Christmas past. "Your Mr. Fezziwig knew how to do it." Scrooge looked thoughtful. "What's the matter?" asked the spirit. Nothing," said Scrooge. "I just felt that I would like to say something to Cratchit, my clerk. That's all." "There are 2 more past Christmases for you to see," said the spirit. Now Scrooge saw himself as a young man sitting in a room beside a beautiful girl whose eyes were full of tears. "If your new love can bring you the happiness I would have tried to give you," she said, "then it's better for us to part." "What new love?" asked the young Scrooge. "Gold," said the girl, whose name was Belle. "But I don't want us to part," cried the young Scrooge. "I'm sorry, Ebenezer, but you're no longer the man I fell in love with. You should marry someone who loves money as much as you do." Then she stood up and left. "Spirit," cried old Scrooge, "it's enough. Please take me home." "There's one more Christmas," said the spirit. Now they were in a comfortable room that was full of children who were laughing and playing, and sitting on the sofa was a beautiful middle-aged woman whom Scrooge recognized immediately as Belle. Suddenly the door opened, and the children shouted with delight as they rushed towards their father, whose arms were full of Christmas presents. The children hugged him and tried to grab the presents, while their father laughed, holding the packages out of their reach. At last, the children allowed their father to sit down with his wife. "Belle," he said with a smile, "I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon." "Who was it?" "Mr. Scrooge. I passed by his office window and saw him sitting, all alone." "Spirit," said Scrooge, his voice trembling, "let me go home." And now he found himself in his own bedroom. With all that remained of his strength, he managed to crawl into his bed, where he sank into a deep sleep. Once again, he woke up to find the room filled with light, and this time he found himself staring at a cheerful giant who was dressed all in green and was holding a flaming torch.
"I am the ghost of Christmas present," said the giant. "Merry Christmas, Ebenezer."
"Spirit," said Scrooge, "last night I learned many lessons. Take me wherever you wish." "Then touch my robe," said the giant. Scrooge touched the green robe and immediately found himself outside a little house in a poor district of the city. The giant raised his torch and blessed the house before they entered. Inside, Mrs. Cratchit was setting the table, and there were 5 children either helping or playing or singing or dancing. "Where are your father and Tiny Tim?" asked Mrs. Cratchit. And at that very moment, Bob Cratchit came into the room, carrying Tiny Tim on his shoulders and Tiny Tim's crutch under his arm. The little boy was